Bridging the Digital Divide. Listen to Sanjay talking in a tutorial about the digital divide and answer questions 1 to 4.
So, Sanjay, I asked you to find out about how the villagers of Virampattinam are managing to bridge the digital divide. How did you get on?
Oh, I found it very interesting. Virampattinam is a small village on the east coast of India, near Pondicherry. That's south of Chennai. Now, this village, in the year 2000, had no telephone connection and no electricity supply. It was just the sort of place which we'd expect to be completely left behind as the technological revolution rushed ahead. But that year, they had an internet connection installed in the village, and now each day a local volunteer in the village checks for information which is useful to the villagers.
Really? But how is that possible if there was no telephone or electricity?
Well, quite simple, really. They installed a solar panel to provide the power, and instead of an old-fashioned telephone line, the internet connection was provided by a wireless transmission system, all very high-tech.
And then what does the volunteer do with the information? Print it out in a newspaper?
No, that would be far too slow and expensive. He just picks up a microphone and broadcasts the information to the whole village using a public address system. You know, simple ideas are often the best, and villagers can hear what they want to know while they're having tea in the local cafe or doing their shopping. They don't even have to go to a meeting.
Before you hear the rest of the tutorial, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen to the rest of the tutorial and answer questions 5 to 10.
So what sort of information do these villagers get from the internet?
Well, I'll give you a few examples. Virampattinam is on the coast, and quite a lot of the villagers are fishermen. From the web, they can find out what weather conditions will be like the next day, and if they know about the weather, they know whether it'll be safe to go fishing. This internet connection can actually save lives.
Now that really is remarkable.
Another useful application is that they can find out how much crops are selling for in the markets of Pondicherry and Chennai. You see, a lot of the villagers earn a living from farming, so you can imagine how useful that is. Also, by looking on the internet, people can find out about jobs which are on offer, and then go and do them. This in turn brings more money into the area.
But wasn't the system very expensive to install? How did they manage it?
The system was the idea of M.S. Swaminathan. You may have heard of him.
Wasn't he the man behind the Green Revolution?
Yes, he did his PhD in plant genetics at Cambridge in the 1950s. Actually, he was a major force behind the agricultural revolution. The agricultural revolution largely solved India's food problems, and his foundation designed and paid for this installation. When you think about it, it's a much cheaper solution than installing electricity and telephone lines to the village, though those will come with time, I expect.
Do the villagers have the know-how to use something as sophisticated as the internet?
Well, the technology is sophisticated, but the internet itself is very user-friendly. That's why it's such a powerful tool. And it's very important that the people who handle the information are not technicians from outside, who have their own interests and priorities, and certainly not civil servants, who might tell the villagers what they think they should know. No, it has to be the local people, who know what information they need, and can look after their own interests. I'll give you an example. You remember I told you one of the pieces of information which villagers want is how much crops are selling for in the markets? Well, if they get this information, then they're in a much better position to negotiate with the intermediaries who come to the village to buy their produce and may tell all sorts of stories to get prices down.
Well, that's true. So once again, it proves the old saying that information is power. Thank you very much, Sanjay. That was very good. Well done.
My pleasure.
Now turn to Section 2. Test 4, Section 2. You will hear a talk on local radio about a short film festival in the town of Adborn. Now you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 16.
Today we're pleased to have on the show Fatima Johnson, who is the organiser of the Adborn Film Festival. Welcome, Fatima.
Hello.
Can you tell us a bit about the background to the festival and what it brings to the town?
Well, the festival was started in 1996 by the then Mayor of Adborn, Joanne Smith. She wasn't a filmmaker herself. She'd actually been a very energetic tourism development officer for many years. But Adborn had run a classical music festival, which had been becoming less and less popular in recent years. Joanne was looking around for something to replace it, and to use funds allocated to it to promote something which local people can enjoy.
Great. So tell us about the festival nowadays.
Well, it's held in the last 2 weeks of August every year, and short films from all over the world are shown in 3 places, in the theatre and our 2 cinemas. Several films are shown in one performance, and the whole thing lasts about 90 minutes. Tickets are very reasonably priced. Under 12s used to get in for 50p, but now we charge just £1, which is still very good value. £1.50 for students and £2.50 for everyone else. Performances are advertised all round town and also on our website, www.adbornfest.com. If you're interested in attending any performance, you can buy tickets online, of course. And you can also get them in the library, which is right next to the main shopping area. I'm afraid this year tickets are no longer available from either of the 2 cinemas because of restricted opening times.
I understand you also run a film competition?
Yes, for under 18s. We have a different theme every year. Last year, for example, the theme was Future Planet, and the winner was a 10-minute documentary encouraging youngsters to be more aware of environmental issues, focusing on getting school kids to cycle to school instead of going by car. This year, the theme is Sporting Nation, so there'll also be lots of ideas to choose from. Now, we're always on the lookout for new local talent, so if you live in the Adborn area and are under 18, you should have a go. We have an excellent prize every year donated by local businesses, shops, hotels, etc. This year, you can win a high-spec movie camera worth over £800. Application forms are on the website, and the deadline for sending in your film to enter the competition is the last day of July. It's May now, so you'll have the whole of June to be working on it.
Now you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
And what are the judges looking for?
Well, although we choose very topical issues like the environment, we're not looking for propaganda, trying to get people to do something. Instead, we're looking for a new angle, a fresh way of looking at a theme. And of course, because it's a short film festival, it's not really about a fully worked story with well-rounded characters. It's more about good photography, conveying things visually.
And who judges the films?
A panel of 3 people who know a lot about film. We've used the same judges for many years and we're very happy with their expertise. One thing we probably will change next year, though, is we want to add another class and another prize for older filmmakers. We'll keep it at a maximum of 10 minutes, though. The length works well for our festival. We also want to use different venues for the film shows, such as community centres and at least one school. It might make performances more accessible to a wider audience. We did explore the possibility of having late-night showings, but that's unlikely to happen in the coming year. So, as I say, if anyone's interested in submitting a film for our competition, go onto our website and you'll be able to access everything.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You'll hear a tutor and a student talking about the history of the scientific method. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25. Hello, Simon. Come in. Take a seat. Now, I wanted to talk to you about your assignment.
Yes, the one on the scientific method.
That's right. I just wanted to see how you were getting on.
Well, I think it's fine. I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of work on it because I've been working on other things. But what I've read so far seems fine.
How many of the references that I gave you have you managed to get hold of?
Not too many, I'm afraid. It seems that everyone else is working on the same things at the same time. And every time I look, the books are checked out from the library.
Right. Well, I think that we can go over the main ground together now. That way, even if you don't manage to go through all the references in detail, you'll still have an overview. What has helped you most so far?
I've managed to have a look at 3 of them. I thought that Johnson made some good points, but it was hard to follow the line of her argument. Bradman was simple and straightforward, and I felt as if I got a lot out of that. I wish I could say the same for Whittaker. To be honest, I didn't get very far with that.
Okay, that's more or less what I'd expect. So tell me, what have you learned so far about the role of the Egyptians and the Babylonians?
Yes. Well, there's evidence that the basic components of the scientific method, examination, diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis, were being used in the early 1600s BC, especially in the treatment of certain illness.
Good. Yes, that's right. And the point, of course, is that that represented a considerable advance over relatively simple, non-empirical approaches, which usually attributed anything unknown to the actions of the gods, etc. Of course, the Egyptians and Babylonians did this as well, but what we see emerging here is a willingness to base opinion on systematic study of the real world, which is at the root of the scientific method.
I see. Right, yes. And then that reappears later.
Yes, although don't get carried away with the idea that it was a simple process of development. By the time we get to ancient Greece, let's take the period towards the middle of the 5th century BC, the rules governing the scientific method were practiced on a widespread scale, but there were still many people who believed that real truth could only be acquired by pure rational thought. Plato, of course, had a great influence on the development of the scientific method during this period.
Through his academy.
That's right. But then, as we know, a great deal of understanding of the scientific method disappeared as the old world order collapsed. It wasn't until the Middle Ages, sometime before the 11th century, that several versions of the scientific method emerged from the medieval Muslim world, all of which stressed the importance of experimentation in science.
Right. I think I've got the historical timeline.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The other thing I'm struggling with slightly is actually pinning down precisely what we mean by the scientific method. I wonder if you could give me some pointers on that.
Sure. Well, it's best to think of the scientific method as a series of steps in a process which allows us to find answers to questions about the world around us. So the first step is to identify the problem. What is it that you want to know or explain?
And then I think the next step is designing an experiment.
But you can't design an experiment unless you know what you want your experiment to tell you.
Oh, yes. You need to form a hypothesis to be tested before you design the experiment.
So there's a very clear relationship between hypothesis and experiment. Having designed the experiment, then of course you go on to carry out the experiment. The particular procedure you follow, the protocol, will differ from experiment to experiment, but the underlying principle is the same. You analyze the data from the experiment in order to confirm or disprove your hypothesis.
Assuming the experiment is accurate.
Oh yes, if there's anything unusual about the data, or if the results are at all surprising, then you need to ask yourself whether the experiment could be flawed and whether the data could be unreliable. If the answer is yes, then it may be necessary to modify the experiment and go through the process again.
So, once you have reliable, valid results,
then the final step is to communicate them. The wider scientific community needs to know about the results, and publication in journals is the accepted way.
Okay, I think I've got the basics.
It's going to get more complicated as we begin to look at some people who have criticized the scientific method. So you need to make sure that you understand things up to this point. Let me know if you have any further problems with it. That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. In this section, you are going to hear a talk introducing the courses and entry requirements of the Department of Psychology. You now have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 31 to 35.
Good morning and welcome to the Department of Psychology's Information Day for new and intending students. I'm the head of the department and today we plan to give you a clear idea of the main courses we offer, their entry requirements, duration, and the types of jobs you might obtain after gaining these qualifications. During the course of the day, I hope you will take the opportunity to talk to staff and attend information sessions for particular courses that may interest you. Some of these courses are open to school leavers, but some have particular entry requirements, so it is important to note these. Firstly, the Certificate in Psychology is offered as a 6-month course for those wanting a general introduction to the subject for personal or work-related purposes. There are no specific entry requirements. At undergraduate diploma level, we provide a 1-year diploma in psychology course designed for those already in employment whose work and previous training is not in psychology. There are no particular entry requirements, and students in this course usually take it to help them progress into their careers. For a major in psychology, we offer a 3-year degree course called a Bachelor of Arts, after which students can go on to take other courses if they want to specialise in psychology. The only requirement for this course is the usual undergraduate admission to university. Now, for the more specialised courses in psychology, we offer a master's degree to be taken over 18 months. This can be by research or coursework, but entry to this programme is only through first gaining a degree in psychology. That means you must have a degree majoring in psychology. And lastly, for those wanting clinical qualifications at postgraduate level, we offer a diploma in clinical psychology over a 12-month period, usually called Clinical Psychology Diploma, for short. The minimum entry requirement for this programme is an appropriate honours degree.
Now look at questions 36 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 36 to 40.
Now, it's also important that you have some understanding of the types of work these courses can prepare you for, and it's useful to know the relationship between the work you might do after you complete the course and the work of others who have studied different courses in psychology. As I said before, the Certificate in Psychology is for personal interest or possibly for work-related purposes, but doesn't qualify you in any particular way. Our students in this course can range from women who have stopped work to care for their children and the children have now commenced school, to the support staff in a specialised publishing company. They really vary a lot. The undergraduate diploma usually attracts people working in offices such as banks or in some government departments. If you gain a degree with a major in psychology, again, you are not professionally trained, but this could enable you to undertake further training to obtain professional qualifications, or it might just be part of a first degree that will help you to get a good job that doesn't require particular specialisation at that stage. After completing a master's degree, you would expect to have some specialisation, perhaps in research or on a particular aspect of psychology, such as child development. For those who also have a clinical diploma, there are a wide range of jobs available. Some focus on helping people with personal adjustment or family problems. Others might concentrate more on using psychological tests, or perhaps working in particular institutions, such as those for the mentally ill, or in prisons. There are many other job opportunities, so if you are interested to discuss possibilities with any of the staff today.
This is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.